And I'm telling you right now, if you're listening to this, choose you first, because you cannot ever pour from an empty cup. If you are choosing other people, be it your immediate family, be it your close friends, you always have that factor in you, because at the end of the day, you go lay down in bed, you are dwelling in yourself. You may have checked all the boxes on for the sake of your friend, for the sake of your family, for the sake of your neighbor or your co-workers, but what about yourself? So as I said,
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Conversational Lounge with Trudy, where we mentor, connect, and inspire others through real life stories. Hello, and welcome to Conversational Lounge with Trudy. Welcome to the show.
thank you so much, Trudy. Pleasure to have you here today.
Absolutely. And can you walk me through who is Jane?
Yes, my name is Jane Stelmach. I live in the United States of America, and I moved to the United States of America about 18 years ago. And I moved from the little tiny country in Africa called Kenya. Primarily, I wanted to seek greener pastures in terms of higher education, and that was my primary motivation for moving to America. Now, when I moved to America, there was a lot of growth that I ended up having to do. So I ended up having to learn the culture of America while also getting into the weeds of it. As a young girl growing up in Kenya, I grew up in the little town of Kisumu, and we stayed in a little estate called Tomboya, but our family was the outlier in that estate, meaning our house was made up of tin roof, and we had holes on the roof. And our neighbors had posh houses. They had fenced in yards, not our house. Our house was wide open. The yard was wide open. Anybody could walk through. In fact, the people who would go from point A to B, which means they're going from their houses to the market, would cut through our house because it was that open. Now, we growing up, I struggled. I grew up with a single mother, and so I watched her work very tirelessly, and I made a determination in my heart to always work hard for myself as well and better my life so that my children didn't have to watch me work so hard. My mother woke up in the morning and I got my breakfast and she walked to work. She walked to work. And then she would walk back home at lunchtime because she cared so deeply about the house and about myself. And so she came back at lunchtime to have lunch at home. And sometimes, let me tell you, there was no lunch. Sometimes there was just water to drink. But her goal was to make sure that during the lunch hours, she's keeping an eye on the house. And then she would walk back to work and then walk back home again in the evening. So I would wait for my mother outside, and I remember I would sit out in the veranda watching the sky and looking at the moon. So that's just a glimpse of my childhood. It was a struggling childhood, and it was just me and my mother. And then about 20, when I turned about 15 years of age, I got a little sister. Now, both of us have different fathers, and I didn't grow up with my father. So, culturally, also, I never really asked much about my father. But I remember sitting on the veranda and really regretting or thinking back and saying, if my father was here, I would have a bicycle to ride like my neighbors. If my father was here, I would have soda to drink in the evening at 4 o'clock during snack time. So there was a lot of ifs that I talked about because I thought my father would be the solution to the problems. Now, when I graduated high school, my mother worked very hard to put me through school, which I'm really grateful for. Because when I graduated, I wanted to seek higher education. And so I started the process of obtaining the US visa. I tried 3 times before I finally obtained that US visa. And let me tell you, when I obtained that US visa, we also hosted a harambe so that I could get money to travel into the United States to come and go through my higher education. Now, landing into the United States, I was as naive as the grasshopper in your backyard. I did not know anything about owning a cell phone, using a computer, talking to people. So I remember my first phone call at the airport was to 911 because I needed to call my auntie to come pick me up from the airport and take me to the school. As you know, when you come here to school from the airport, you're supposed to show that track history of heading to school. And I couldn't figure out how to use the payphone. And because I thought asking a stranger a question might lead me to a trap of being kidnapped, I looked at the payphone and it showed there that for emergencies situation, call 911. And
Oh
so
my
I called
goodness.
911 and the lady on the phone, I remember after I repeated my question, she mentioned to me that my situation was not an emergency. And so she hung up the phone before I even asked my question. And so at that moment, I developed that courage that I needed to ask somebody, hey, can you help me use the phone? I would like to
Yes.
call my auntie.
Mhm.
At the same time, it opened my eyes into perspective because even though I felt my situation was an emergency situation, the lady on the phone didn't feel like it was an emergency situation. In fact, she felt that I was abusing the 911 system, as I came to learn later. So those were just some of the lessons that I adopted as I came into this country. And I remember my first college years in this country. I ate a lot of Chinese chicken. My first job, I was a dishwasher in the company dining hall, getting paid $6.50 an hour, working from 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night because that's the time I could afford to go and work. Because during the day, I would be going through lectures from one hall, residential hall, to the next residential hall and going through the lectures. So I would carve out time in the evening to go work in the dining hall so that I could afford a cell phone and have a cell phone and even be able to afford a little bit of pocket money. So my humble beginnings working in the dining hall really opened my eyes into a lot because when I worked in the dining hall, my job was to wash the dishes on this big machine, and the dirty dishes would come down the conveyor with half food on it. People would leave a lot of food on their plates, and my job as a dishwasher was not to think about the food on the plate. It was to get those dishes cleaned. And so my instructions was to throw away the food in the garbage. And that made me feel very sad because in my heart, I knew this food could feed a village for at least 1 week back home in Kenya. And so there's one common saying that I usually remember. In a round planet, there is no choosing sides. And so as I worked tirelessly in the dining hall, I remembered there's food getting wasted here, but there's also the perspective aspect because people who are enjoying this food may have served more than they wanted to in their plates and then realize they did not want to finish it. And who am I to say they're wasting the food? And so as I got through my college years, after my first year, I remembered making the decision to move from New York to Minnesota. So I got a bus ticket, in a Greyhound bus ticket, because I could not afford airfare. And the tuition fee that I had managed to pay for my first year was because of the Harambe efforts. And so each semester, I was expected to pay tuition. And the tuition was not the resident tuition, it was the out of state tuition. So $7,000 just on tuition alone, and then 2,000 on residency, another 2,000 on food. And I told myself, how is this going to work? I cannot call my mom and ask her for money. I know she doesn't have the money. And so I started looking for alternatives for a cheaper education. And that's where I landed in a community college in Minnesota. So I got on a bus, Greyhound bus, rode the bus to Minnesota. I didn't have any means. I had a family friend who hosted me until I was able to be on my feet. And so, as the family friend hosted me, I started to look for ways to make some income. And I was fortunate enough to also find another part-time job to kind of work while I went to school. So I did that for about 6 years. It took me 6 years to obtain my college degree. And at the time, by that time, I had also managed to buy a car. My first car was $1,000. It was a
Mm-hmm.
Nissan Altima. It made a lot of noise, like a bunch of cricket in the big Yankee Stadium, but it drove me from point A to B. Once I achieved my degree, I told
Mm-hmm.
myself it's time to get out with this degree and see what the world has for me. Now, as I had started my work as an operator, I had worked the graveyard shift and I had worked with people who looked like me. And I had often wondered, why is it that they're just people who look like me working this night shift? And when we are leaving in the morning, I barely see people who look like me coming into work. And so there was a stigma about the types of jobs we could get. And I remember when I first applied for a job that was considered a job not for people like me, I remember getting a lot of questions from my peers about, are you sure this is what you want to do? You know, those jobs just belong to this type of people. And so I remember my own determination in getting that job. And I remember excelling in that job interview and nailing that first job after I had graduated from college. And so throughout my career, I had always envisioned myself working to the top of the ladder. I always looked at a success as a straight thing that goes from the bottom to the top. And so I always envisioned myself becoming a vice president of a certain company. And let me tell you, after about 7 years of my corporate career, I realized there is more to life than climbing the corporate ladder. I went through a very hard, difficult time at corporate, and I had to center myself. I had to go back to that childhood Jane, that childhood Yvonne, and realize that I may have swayed myself into a lot of determination in terms of career, and I may have forgotten some of my roots. And so I started thinking about my career as far as it's bringing me money, it's helping me feed myself, pay the rent, but I'm not really happy with it because it's not my passion. And so I started developing what is called a Venn diagram, which looks at what are you good at? Because something that you are good at may not be the thing that brings you money every week. And so I
Mm-hmm.
started looking at what am I good at? What are some of the passions? Like, what is something I would want to learn? I would thoroughly embrace it if someone taught me. What am
Mm-hmm.
I doing for career? And how can I marry all these three together so that I feel like I'm giving back to myself and not just working for the sake of working? And then the other thing that I really thought about was the universe. I remembered how I had journeyed through oceans and seven seas from Africa to America. And I started looking at the world as a universe. I wasn't looking at it from the angle of, I am in America and I came from Kenya. I just started looking at it universally. And I said, what does the world need right now? And it boiled down to there's a lot of human suffering because of some of the conditions we are raised in, because of some of the things that we adopted throughout our family, our society, our work structures, or even our peers. There is many times I walked away from my peers because something did not serve me. And I felt as if it would be great to join the peers in the moment of the peer pressure, but then I would regret it afterwards. And so I had to make the decisions to choose me. And I'm telling you right now, if you're listening to this, choose you first. because you cannot ever pour from an empty cup. If you are choosing other people, be it your immediate family, be it your close friends, you always have that factor in you, because at the end of the day, you go lay down in bed, you are dwelling in yourself. You may have checked all the boxes on for the sake of your friend, for the sake of your family, for the sake of your neighbor or your co-workers, but what about yourself? So as I centered myself, and I remember by this time I was married, and I was fortunate enough to get that title of becoming a United States citizen, and see or realize what type of benefits do come with along with that. And so I managed to get a house together with my husband, and we had children. And so, at this time, I'm checking the box. I've gone through college. We have a house. We have children. Now it's time to enjoy life. But boy, I was wrong. I got into this cycle of, you wake up in the morning, dropping your kids off at daycare, go to work, come back in the evening, pick them up, spend few moments, catching up with what may have happened at daycare, and then having dinner, going to bed, and doing it all over again. And I remember one summer looking at my husband, because we had a 5-acre property in the state of Minnesota. And if you know Minnesota, it gets very cold for a good amount of 4 to 5 months or 6 months in some years. And for a person like me who grew up in the tropics, as soon as it hit November, I was in hibernation mode until April. And so I felt as if I was not realizing the value of my home, the value of living in a 5-acre property, to be able to utilize it to the fullest potential, because that is something I learned in school. You don't just look at the cost of something, you look at the return of investment. And so here I am sitting on this house, but I can only utilize it for half of the year. And so a lot of questions started floating in my head. And then as my children started growing older, and I'm that determined parent who, when my children were growing up, I would spend some time reading to them, just trying to pick their brains on, what do you think about this story? And so my children really enjoyed reading. And so we quickly got into a preschool type of environment in the house, where we are doing addition, and we are doing shapes, and we are doing colors. And quickly I realized these children have so much more potential than we can ever give them credit for. My children were teaching me things, and they were absorbing things in ways that I could never imagine. And
Before you go there, before you,
and as I spoke,
'cause now you're getting to, the kids' life and the current status right now. But what I'm
yes,
a
and
little bit
now I'm
fascinated
growing.
is, so you came from Kenya. Of course, you started with humble beginnings, like, most immigrants do. You even started as a
Yes.
dishwasher. But there's a moment that you found your footing. You finally found your footing. You even got a corporate career that truly propelled you to, the life as you know it in America, living the American dream, being
Yeah.
married, having kids, 5 acres. So what was that moment, the wake up moment for you that propelled you from, the entry level jobs to,
The moment that propelled me from entry level job to scaling,
yeah.
it was once I had those children, and I started thinking about their future, and I started wondering, do I want them to go through everything I've gone through? And I told myself, I love myself too much, and I love them too much to see them have to go through that.
Mhm.
That was the moment. And I remember, because my son, at this time when I'm heavy in my corporate career, I didn't see much of my son's first 2 years. Oh, he's walking now. Oh, he's saying few words. I was just catching up to the high level details. And I felt I was doing a disservice to my own children. I was absorbed in the corporate culture. I was working towards higher goals. And then I realized that those higher goals were not really going to serve me, and they were not serving the planet. And so I had to scale back on my commitment to those higher goals that I thought I once had in corporate. And I told myself, my kids don't see me all day. They spend time with strangers at daycare, and sure enough, they were getting well cared for. But I truly believe that as a parent, you know your child best. And as a parent, you are your first child's educator and your first child's advocate. And that was a very turning point in my lifetime. And so I quickly decided that the more money I'm making, the more reasons I'm finding to spend it. I sat down with my spouse and we decided a single family income was going to work for us, because both of us were waking up in the morning, driving an hour away to work, and then kids are in daycare. And so we resorted to single family income. We looked at our expenses and we realized our needs were very minimal. Food, shelter, clothing, and a little bit of money for emergency room visits. They were very minimal. And so we decided to cut back on our annual income. It was no longer, oh, I want to keep working because I want to get this raise. It was more of, I want time freedom. I want location freedom. I want more time with the children. I want more time with the community. So the goals quickly shifted from this materialistic way to more of serving, living to serve. And so as I gardened, I remember now thinking, okay, you're still gonna need some sort of income to pay some rent. And it means you have to keep working in this place at this location, which means you gotta have a house at a certain place. And I remember putting a word out there in the universe and telling myself, can I ever get a remote job that allows me to work from anywhere? Because I'm living in a first world country. Technology is so advanced, and I'm working in a medical device company where I know the doctors can remotely monitor patients. If the doctor can treat a patient miles and miles away because of technology, why couldn't I get a job that I can work miles and miles away? I looked at the time I was spending in traffic and the time I was spending getting ready for work. And I realized this is the time I could spend doing other things, like reading a book to my children or playing a game with them before their day starts. And so we re-strategized single family income, and we gave up a lot. We gave up the fancy dinners. We gave up the fancy clothes, having multiple closets in the house, multiple layers of shoes when you only put on two. And we gave up that. We had to get
How was
to
the
that place.
transition? How was the
Yes,
transition? Because,
the
living in
transition.
America, we become very materialistic. And, you see
Yes.
your neighbor having this, you want to have the same thing. So how was that? Walk me through that transition and how it was.
It was all about humility. You know, we live in America whereby if I wake up in the morning and there's no water running in my tap, I can call the city and I know within a couple of hours they'll fix it. But then I forget, because back home, I would wake up and if there was no water in the tap, that meant 6 or 7 trips to the borehole to collect water in a can and bring it home before I could start my day. So it came back to the humility and to say, what do you need and what do you want? And as long as I wake up and I can sit in a toilet and not have to squat in a hole, as long as I wake up and I have clean running water that I can drink without having to think twice, I can, with the flick of a light, there's light in the room. What more am I looking for in the world? It was all about perspective, because
Mhm.
I am one person among billions and billions of people on the planet. And I didn't do anything special to God to get to have what I have. And the people who are living in the planet didn't do anything special either. But if I wake up alive and breathing, I'm already at 50%. And I'm grateful for just being able to wake up alive and breathing. And this is where my corporate background comes in. I have spent years and years analyzing images of sick people, people who are sick, and people who rely on medicine to treat them. I can't sleep, I need a pill. I can't eat, I need a pill. I can't do my work, I need a pill. And I kept thinking to myself, if you had a good meal made of fruits and vegetables, and you had
Mhm.
clean drinking water, why are you losing sleep? I worked with corporate individuals who were strapped with student loans, and they were scared of leaving their mothers and fathers' nests because of the student loans. And I said, this is not humbling. Yes, you have that college degree from that prestigious school, but I call it golden handcuffs. If it's not freeing, it's golden handcuffs. And so I realized that you have to find something that you're passionate about, and
Mhm.
something that the world needs, and something that brings you fulfillment. It's not about the big checks. It's not about the status. I remember so many times when I would show up at work, I would park my car at the very back in the parking lot because I didn't want anybody to see me getting in my rusty car. I was that timid about it. But
Mhm.
at least I didn't get to the point of I'm gonna go and buy a car and have this $300 payment on top of a comprehensive insurance just so I can prove to my coworkers that I'm making it. And I even remember a coworker telling me that, oh, now you work with the engineers, you should be able to afford a better car. And I remember my comment. I said, I need a car to take me from point A to B, not to become my luxury niche. And so it was the humility. And then the other thing, it was the quieting down my head and centering myself, waking up in the morning and spending at least 30 minutes just being grateful for being awake, and then journaling on a book about my goals. What am I looking forward to accomplish today? I want to read to my children. I want to call a friend. Just those little things. It's not about, oh, I want to make sure I get to that $1 million, because I have worked with people who are making $1 million and they cannot sleep because they are more worried about the money in their banks. The corporate world opened my eyes into so many things, and it made me realize that humility goes a long way. Peace starts from within. Peace does not come from outside of you. Peace does not come from that house or that big bank account check or that prestigious dress that you just spent money on. Peace comes from within. And as long as I have peace in my heart, I can accomplish anything I want to. And so that quickly propelled into human suffering, and the fact that some of the health conditions that we end up having to deal with in later stages in life are because of how we grew up. We end up being so busy to cook our own healthy meals that it's easy enough for me to just stop at a fast food. That fast food might be convenient right now, but
Mhm.
it's clogging your arteries. And 30, 40 years from now, you are going to need something to open up your arteries so that your blood can flow. You start getting into high blood pressure issues. And when we are young and vibrant, we don't know it. We can do anything. We can brag about, oh, I can work 24 hours. I don't need the sleep. But guess what? Your body is taking the toll, and it's going to pay for it down the road. And so Having witnessed all these image of clogged arteries, I told myself, I don't want to be there. I want to honor my body. I want to honor myself. And I want to pour from a full cup as much as I can. And so eating healthy is something that I quickly adopted. And I remember thinking to myself, how can it be efficient yet healthy enough? And so I started grinding up my smoothies, which is fruits and vegetables in a blender. And people would say, that stuff looks so nasty. And I would say, I know it's nasty as it looks, but tell you what, my body is thankful for it. And then let's talk about addiction. At this time, I'm grinding my smoothies, but I'm also still loving my meats, my breads. I would bake an entire bread and eat it. I would grill an entire rack of rib and eat it all. And so I started educating myself on nutrition. When I gave birth to my children, they were diagnosed with eczema. I went to the smartest doctors on this planet, and they could not give me any answers. And that's where my wheels really started turning. And it was not until I did my own research and nailed it down to root cause, because the doctors were in the business, and they still are. Doctors are in the business of managing the symptoms. You are in that clinic for 15 minutes and they're on to their next patient. And so I felt that my children were not being serviced. I felt that, oh my gosh, they have eczema, doctor. What can we do about it? Oh, we're going to prescribe this ointment. Go and try it out for 1 month. Come back, we will see how it goes. Oh, doctor, she is still very itchy at night. Oh, let's upgrade the dose. And so it got to a point where I had to tell myself, no, Jane, you were also born with the knowledge of good and evil. And when something smells bad, it sure is bad. So I started doing my own research. And so that's where I also encourage everybody. Believing in professions, believing in smart people sometimes can hinder you, because you are your own advocate. And our gut thinking, our instinct, we should rely on that. And so I started doing my own research. I eliminated a lot of food in my diet just so my kids could thrive. And so down the road, when my kids were done growing up, during the breastfeeding journey is when I learned so much about food, and the fact that the food we are putting in our body was going to eventually cause all these issues, which is why we have so many commercials about these things and these things. And I don't see any commercials about healthy eating. I'm like, why can't I see a commercial about a group of people just enjoying fresh oranges from a garden? Yes, this is existing, but what about this other aspect? And so as I educated myself into the world of capitalism, I realized unless you advocate for yourself, it's very easy to get absorbed into the capitalistic world, and very quickly you are relying on these technology solutions for things that you can take care of if you only trusted yourself. And so we made major drastic changes with our diet. And that was also a shift. We talk about addiction to beer or addiction to wine. How about addiction to meat? Such that there's times where a day goes by and I didn't eat meat, I'm irritated. And the moment someone says, oh, Jen, I'm going to buy you a burger, something in my brain lights up. And I would think, my goodness, I can't do without meat. But as I grew older and I approached my 40, I told myself, I can't keep doing this to myself. I can't keep putting all this meat in my body, because on the other hand, the idea of eating meat and taking a bite is good. But boy, once that meat starts processing, and here it is now day 1, day 2, and I haven't gone number 2. And I'm asking myself, something is not right, because I work in the medical device world and I understand how the body anatomy works. And so I started educating myself on the process of absorption. How do we absorb our food? And the food that we don't absorb, what happens to it? Through that, I learned about calcification and how this calcification eventually gets to your arteries, clogs your arteries, and suddenly you have high blood pressure, the cancer shows up. All these things that end up happening are very much preventable by our diet. And I'm not here to say that somebody who has cancer probably did not do something right. There are certain genetics that are prone to get certain conditions. But for the majority of the part, food is your medicine, and we should let medicine be food. That's it. Not relying on an extra thing to heal you from the inside. And so as I continued educating myself on this, and even through my children's experiences, I noticed that the days where I ate fruits and vegetables, I was happy. I was very clear. My mind was clear. I'm very joyful. I'm dancing around. I don't have headache. When I go to sleep, it's a good night's rest. And I don't have swelling. Swelling is something that was impacting me. My feet, my legs would swell. I had water retention. And I would wonder, why do I have water retention? And it was because of the food. And I know, down the road, I don't know how much more time we have. I am launching a company called Root Cause Healing. And I'm launching it because I'm combining my experiences, my intellectual property, as well as my observances of the world to establish root cause healing. And it's really to understand at the root of a problem, what should you do in order to fix a problem? Because putting a band-aid on something, for example, I am too busy to cook, so I'm going to go to fast food. That's a band-aid, because that fast food might be enjoyable and convenient at the time, but down the road, you're going to pay for it. And so it's thinking about those simple solutions and just going back to Mother Nature too, when how God intended for us to use the planet and to thrive in it. And also to think about the income that I'm making and the impact it's making on the planet. Everything in this planet is energy. Even the food we eat, the people we attract, just like you, Trudy. You have no idea. I have been wanting a platform where I can share my story. And I remember at the beginning of this year, I told myself, because this is something I've wanted to do for 3 years now. And I remember the beginning of this year saying, this is my year for telling my story. I don't know
Amen.
how, but it is the year. So Trudy, that one moment that I decided to look into Facebook and I saw your post, it's the universe that directed me to do that. And I'm so thankful for this platform that you've provided for me to share my story. And as far as I'm concerned, if it even impacts one person, even if it means changing your lifestyle, adding more fruit to your diet today, supporting that local farmer. And so my motto to everyone is usually to live the life you wish you'd want to live, not the life that you think your friends, you want your friends to see, not the life that you want your family to see, to live the life that you want to live, because you are doing yourself a good service doing that. And let me tell you, I have met wonderful people who have managed to make great careers just by doing something they love. Just by doing something they love, not because they have these accolades or these degrees and they've worked in these multi-million-dollar places. No, simply doing what they love, and they've managed to impact the world and make a career out of it. And those people, to me, they are winning 10 times more. And so it's like that radio station that you never tuned into, but the channel was there all along. You just
Yeah.
ignored it because you fell in love with one channel. So tune into the other radio stations. Get out of your comfort zones. Don't ignore the signs, the little signs that the universe drops to you. It could be a beggar on the street, and you just being able to serve that beggar, and that beggar putting a word of thank you to you. The universe has magical ways of
Mhm.
returning that back to you. And so as I put out word for the remote job, after I got the remote job, we decided we can move around. I
Mhm.
had an entire laundry list of bucket list items here in America.
Mhm.
I came from a little country in Africa to America, and then for 16 years, I permanently plastered myself in Minnesota.
Mhm.
And my husband, who had also grown up here, had grown up here in Minnesota.
Uh-huh.
And his first plane flight was with me. Someone who has grown up in a first world country. Like, think about
Mhm.
it, you know? And
Mhm.
so we decided the things that are in our bucket list, let's knock them down while we are still youthful and vibrant. And let's knock
Mhm.
them down with our children. So we've been to
Exactly.
all these wonderful places. And tell you what, it's been very humbling for me. I'll share one experience where we were in the South to witness the place where our our African ancestors came in by ship. They were ported here from Africa by ship to come and work in the plantations. And it's very humbling for me to know that they were the backbone of this country. And that gives me enough power such that the other day, I teach Swahili meetups on Zoom every Monday.
Oh,
But
interesting. Good idea.
yes,
Mhm.
one time I logged in and two people literally called me out and they said, we need to send that monkey back to Africa. I have
Whoa.
developed such thick skin and so much humility that it did not shake me. And I sent love to them. I said, they don't know. They don't really know. Because this is a round planet. And in a round planet, there is no choosing sides. There is no
I love
choosing
that
side.
perspective. I really do like that perspective. It's the first time I'm hearing of that term being used, and I can see myself using that again moving forward. In a round planet, and in a round planet, there's no choosing sides. I love that.
Yes.
And another thing too, I do believe that there is a reason why we even connected. You bring a very, very, very unique and interesting perspective when it comes to nutrition. That is not a topic I'll just sit down and think, okay, so I'm gonna go switch how I eat, like, how's that affecting me? But that is interesting. And so what truly happened? I mean, I know you've told me about the story about your kids, and eczema, but is there something that happened in a personal level that made you reassess the way you eat, the way you consume things, and you completely
Yes.
switched to minimizing and starting down this healthy journey?
Yes. And this happened last year. My father, whom I never grew up with, and I spent majority of my childhood wishing he was with us so that we didn't need to suffer. Perspective, looking back at it, I'm thankful I didn't grow up with him because all my half sisters and half brothers are living a different life as compared to myself because of the way I grew up. And that can be a story for another time. But I reconnected with my father as a grown up adult. When I gave birth to my son, I named him after my father. And after I named him after my father, I reconnected with my father. And for the first time, I spoke to my father. And the first thing he told me was he is so sorry for not being part of my life. The second thing he told me was that he gives all the credit to my mother for taking care of me. He said, I am not gonna pretend that I did something for you. It was all your mother. And then the third thing he told me, it's very humbling that even though I was never part of your life, you've given me the honor my grandchild is named after me. And I said, at that point, I had grown, I had done so much growth in myself. I had forgiven him. I had actually said, I'm grateful for the circumstances I grew up in because they made me whom I am today. And so my father sadly passed away before I had the opportunity to go back and see him in person.
I am
He
so
passed away
sorry.
last year in October of kidney failure. My father was an alcoholic. Even once we reconnected, the few times I would call him, I remember this few times I would just hang up because it would be difficult maintaining a conversation. And then the ego in me would start telling me, oh, why would you want to keep talking to an alcoholic who has just given up on life? But then there was this soft side in me that would just say, maintain that relationship. And so my father passed away of kidney failure, and immediately the ego told me, oh, it's alcohol. And I don't drink at this time. I don't drink. I did it back in college days when I was young and vibrant, but nowadays I don't drink. And so I told myself, I'll never get that kidney failure. I don't drink alcohol, you know, casting judgment. And strangely enough, as I approach that 40-year mark, as I'm thinking to myself, I need to stop eating meat because I feel like every time I eat the meat, I know what it does to me. My stomach feels bloated. My legs are swollen. I wake up several times in the night, and then I know I don't go number two. So I'm already calculating how much stuff I'm containing in my cells that's not getting processed or eliminated. And I'm not a big person, so it's not that I'm packing the pounds anywhere. I remember people would joke, do you stuff those meats in hollows in your body? Because I would sit down and demolish a burger after another, not realizing it was my own weird addiction to meat, just like someone would be addicted to alcohol. At this point, I look at them at the same level. And yes, one might be federally regulated such that you know, if you drink a lot of alcohol, you can get that DUI and get in trouble. Nobody tells you that about meat, you know, because the money is in the medicine aspect, whereby once you start suffering those health conditions, you're going to be forever sentenced to doctor visits every week going to a doctor. We were not meant for that. And so as I hit that 40 mark, I put out a word in the universe. I said, I want to stop eating meat when I hit 40. I didn't know how. I was actually scared of how I was going to accomplish this. And so pandemic hit, Clubhouse was here, and I stumbled upon a room, just like I stumbled upon your post about, you know, this forum. I stumbled upon a room talking about detoxing. And 5 minutes into the conversation, I was sold. I started listening in. There's the process of ingestion, there's the process of digestion, there's the process of absorption, and there's process of elimination. If all these four things are working good, then you're good. But if only one is working, you're going to pay for it later. And so quickly here, this became one of my favorite rooms in Clubhouse, whereby every week I'm listening in. And let me tell you, I found that I was not the only one in my own predicament. There were people calling in. I've had this skin rash for so long. And when I took out dairy out of my diet, oh, my skin is glowing. I don't even need makeup. I'm like, oh, I've been suffering for hair loss. And after I took out meat from my diet, my hair is growing. I don't need to put on wigs. I'm like, wow. And so very quickly in this forum, there was an opportunity to do a detox. And I'm not a big person. You know, when I think about detox and these programs, there's this stigma about it only belongs to the people who obviously look overweight. But I told myself, you know, this is really speaking to me. I want to do this detox program. And so for 15 days after Thanksgiving, no meat, no sugar, no cooked food, refined oils, salt, I did that for 15 days. I remember my husband would wake up making the bacon for the kids because that's part of our breakfast. Right now, I'm the one who's ahead in this journey. The other families is following along, but they would wake up and continue on with their program because this was my choice. This is my decision to go into this detox program. And so we had a support group, accountability, having accountability partners to help you. And I dropped a whooping 15 pounds. I was weighing 125 pounds. I dropped to 115. And something else that I noticed, because I had two C-sections. I have three kids. Two of them I gave birth via C-section. And I've always been very sensitive about my scar area. Even though I call it my warrior scar, I've always been so sensitive because it sits like a shelf. And it was because of the water retention that was happening within my body. So that was the first thing I noticed. It went flat. My entire belly went flat because the water retention went out. The meats were out of my system and the energy was flowing as it should. I never really enjoyed chemistry. I only did it as a prerequisite to take other classes. But the chemistry in our body, it works exactly like that. You eat the meat, it doesn't get processed in your body, it's gonna go somewhere if you don't go number two. And if you pile on top of it, now the next morning you're waking up, you're drinking that tea and mandazi, that meat hasn't even processed in your body. Now it's compacting. And then my coach had also encouraged us during the detox. So after we did the first 7 days, and then on the 8th day, she said, go pee in a jar. If your pee has some sediments and residues in it, it means you're very healthy. You're filtering all the waste out of your body. And you know how the theory I always had, if you have clear pee, you're good. That's the theory
Yeah,
that medicine had taught me. Yes,
interesting.
it's wrong. If you have clear pee, it just means you're hydrated. But it doesn't mean that you're processing everything. And so I peed in that jar and I sent her the picture. It was nice and clear. I think I'm good. She texts me back. She's like, we have work to do. Your kidneys are not filtering. And so
Wow.
I realized at 40 years old, I'm identifying the early stages of my kidney issues. Because guess what? 20 years from now, if I don't do anything to get those kidneys to filter, it's going to become a kidney failure. And I'm going to need dialysis to take care of that. And this is just me. This is just my example. There were so many other stories out there similar to mine. And then as a person of color, it's even 10 times fold, especially someone who came in here, came into this culture, and then quickly get absorbed into the processed food. We have to get back to the basics of our roots. The mrenda, the
Mm-hmm.
sukuma wiki, the
Yeah.
oranges, the pawpaw. We have to get back to those basics. And for the ladies who are listening, the health conditions, you have no idea how many stories I've heard of fertility issues that get solved by simply changing our diets. So I hope that encourages somebody. And look up root cause healing. You can look me up anywhere on social media, including LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, or just look me up, Nomad Jane. I've called myself Nomad Jane because I consider myself child of Africa, daughter of America, and now I am trying to become the mother of the universe. And I speak universally. So whenever I see something happening here, I like to think about how much impact does it.
Thank you for sharing your story. It's really encouraging. Just seeing a fellow sister being really passionate about nutrition and even changing her entire life to revolve around it. So, can you tell me more about root cause healing? I know you've
Yes.
mentioned it and you've mentioned how people can get a hold of you, but what is it?
Yes. Root cause healing is all about healing at the root level. So at some point, I developed a mission statement when I was trying to do all these inner discoveries. And my mission statement is to intentionally cultivate meaningful collaboration at the root level. And so root cause healing is really about that. What goes in? Inputs versus outputs. If you think about a process analysis, inputs versus outputs. You put in oranges, you're gonna see oranges. If you put in junk food, don't expect that slim figure. You know, if you're putting in all these sodas, don't expect good sleep because all these sugars are doing something to your body, you know. And so when you have any issues, ask yourself why and keep peeling the onion layer until you get to the root level. If you're having insomnia issues, is it related to the food you're eating? Could it be that milk you drank in the morning? Let me tell you, when I was done having my children and breastfeeding them, I tried to go back to drinking dairy. Each time I drank tea, my stomach would hurt. And I told myself, I grew up drinking tea. Why is it hurting now? You have to give your body the right conditions. And so at root cause healing, we are really going to get to the root of the problem. We are not just going to manage the symptoms. And the root of the problem, we're not going to go hard on it. It's going to be a process. Don't come expecting answers like, oh, Jen, give me the quickest formula. No, it's going to be a journey. You're going to discover so much about your own nutrition. And then you also have to heal your emotional aspects because it's not just the physical body. Sometimes we get into these junk foods because of the emotional stress we have, which could be related to some childhood trauma that we experienced, such that we have so much fear or we don't have enough courage to do something because of something that happened when we were children. And so you're healing internally. You're getting to the root. You're sitting down with yourself for 10 minutes a day and meditating. I have a dream of building a root cause healing center on the hills of Negril in Jamaica. And then you come to my retreat center for a week and I give you all the right tools that work for you and you walk away with so much wealth information. And the way I'm designing it is so that it's the least amount of stress economically for your pocket because there's ways to navigate that. And so my first journey is just with the nutrition. No, we were meant to thrive, not just survive.
I like that a lot. Again, congratulations on this new journey. I wish you the best of luck in any process that you're embarking on. I know you're planning on launching tomorrow, 2/22/22. So hey,
Yes.
all the best in your journey. I like seeing people win. I like seeing people that are selfless enough to, once they discover something is working for them, they also want to share that with other people and see if they can change lives as well. But I just want to give you a moment to share something as a parting shot. If someone's listening and they're truly inspired by your story and they just want to hear more from you, what kind of advice would you give such a person?
Yes. The best advice I would give to that person is always put yourself first. Find your passions and dreams, and we all have them. Don't say you don't have them. We all have them. And number three is to have a perspective in life. Thinking about how you grew up, not dwelling on the difficulties you had rather than, not dwelling on the difficulties you have versus being grateful for those difficulties. Because anytime you're grateful in the universe, you're grateful for a small thing, the universe pays you tenfold. So always be grateful for any circumstance that you may have gone through, be it positive, be it negative. And here is another quote: man was made for joy and woe. We tend to really just like the joy aspects and then regret the woe aspects. No. Such that if something that's considered bad is happening, ask yourself, why am I this situation? Close your eyes and say, hey, universe, why am I in this situation? What is this situation here to teach me? Because man was made for joy and woe. And then, as always, if there is something that ever inspires you, be that person who inspires the next person. Because you just never know how somebody woke up, how their day has been, and what you say to them or the actions you do to them could mean the world to them. Be their world.
Thank you so much. That is impactful. I don't want to take all your time. I know you have a busy afternoon and a busy day tomorrow. So thank you so much for being with us at the Conversational Lounge. Jane, have a wonderful day.
Thank you for this platform, and thank you for your beautiful self showing up. Thank you so much for your time, and until next time, goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you so much. For everyone else back home, thank you so much for always sticking with us. Again, thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Until next time, have a great day.